This is Michael McKeon, a.k.a. Morris Fletcher, a.k.a. Chuck McGill. You know who I am. But it's time for Inside the Gilliverse with Eric Broadbent.
You're watching Inside the Gilliverse, talking all things Breaking Bad, El Camino, and Better Call Saul. Brought to you by Stewart Travel Guitars. See the incredible stowaway travel guitar at stewartguitars.com. Also brought to you by Idea Bench, makers of hot rod-inspired pedal boards and pedal board accessories at ideabench.com. Microphones for Inside the Gilliverse are brought to you by Rode Microphones. Now, please welcome your host, Eric Broadbent.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for episode 21 of Inside the Gilliverse, where we talk all things Breaking Bad, El Camino, and Better Call Saul. My name is Eric Broadbent, and it comes with great pleasure once again to welcome our host, our co-host, our guest this evening. We don't have a co-host tonight. We have a great celebrity co-host tonight. It's nice to have her from fantastic episodes from Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, writer Gennifer Hutchison. So you're a celebrity co-host now, okay? Just so I don't sound like a complete idiot.
Okay, great,
right.
Awesome.
How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. You know, it's all this talk we're talking about Tom Schnauz and all those bad things I was saying about Tom off the air. I totally forgot I don't have a co-host temporarily, so you're it for this evening. But I tell you, if any indication of social media of people were sending me messages all over the place, they're so excited that you're going to be appearing on the show. I've got text messages, I've got Facebook messages, so you have quite the fandom. Not only from people watching the show, but people that have worked with you in the past. So this is going to be a treat, and I'm really grateful for your time this evening.
Thank you for having me. That's so nice to hear.
Awesome. Well, we're going to jump right into some questions, and we've got one right off the hop from one of our YouTube channel members and one of our good friends, Lori. And she says, I know that you can't talk a lot about Amazon's Lord of the Rings, but can you tell us how you were chosen to be part of the creative team's incredible lineup of talent?
I was not looking to leave Better Call Saul. You know, I mean, I've been in that universe since season 1 as an assistant and worked up. So I really wasn't looking. And Amazon asked if I would come in and just kind of do like a general meeting. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. Why not? You know? And I went in and then they started talking a little bit more about Lord of the Rings. And then they were like, you know, would you like to meet with the showrunners? And I was like, of course I would, because I want to hear what the show is, you know, like just generally curious. And I did, and it was a great meeting. And then it just sort of kind of kept growing from there, where I was like, oh, I'm not actually going to do this. I love Saul. I love my family there. And I think that I don't think I could have left for anything less than Lord of the Rings.
Right.
You know, it was one of those things where it was kind of a once in a lifetime sort of opportunity. And, you know, I'm a huge genre fan and I love Lord of the Rings. And so it was kind of like, how do you stare this in the face? So it's like a heartbreaking decision in a lot of ways. But I did. So yeah, it was really, it was just sort of serendipitous that it was kind of the timing. I was, you know, between seasons and I didn't go looking, you know, it's like they just sort of landed on my door, which is, I guess, in keeping with the mythology. And I think a lot of us, it was the same thing where we just weren't necessarily looking, but then they came knocking and we sort of formed this, and I'm going to be super cheesy, but, you know, this really beautiful fellowship of people and, you know, it was a hard decision, but it's been such a wonderful experience that, like, I feel, you know, it was worth it.
Oh yeah.
I had to leave my friends
and the family, right? With so many guests, I think everybody that's been on the show, cast and crew, have said how it's like, even Michael Slovis last week, he says, you know, it doesn't always happen this way, to have like a, you know, be working and really love every part of your job, every person that's on the crew. You know, the family, you know, it doesn't always happen like that. So I can see where it would be hard for you to let that go. But I know all of them would be like, if you don't take this gig, you know, like take the gig. And that'd be one of those things where if you turned it down, looking back, you know, 10 years from now, looking back, you're like, oh man, that was probably one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made, not, you know, turning it down possibly. So that's fantastic. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, it was definitely one of those moments where I was like, what will I regret? And then there's this sort of weird opportunity where now I'm watching Better Call Saul as a fan, which has never happened to me in the entirety of the, Breaking Bad universe. I've been a part of it since the beginning, so I always know what's happening. And so being able to experience it as just a fan has been really interesting and gratifying in a way I didn't expect.
Yeah, that's almost like, I won't get into politics whatsoever, but if you're if you're the prime minister here in Canada or you're the president of the United States, you get all this glory and the secret access to Area 51 and all that kind of cool stuff. And I guess Area 51 in your case would be Vince's scripts and your scripts and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And now sorry, Genny, your credentials are cut off now. You only see what's happening live on TV.
Yes.
Yeah. And I will.
The good thing is they didn't mess it up. So,
Yeah, there you go. That's right. Come on, guys. I put some good work down here, some groundwork. Don't ruin my characters. But we'll talk later on in the program. I've got a question based as a fan. I'm going to ask you as a fan towards season 6 here. But there's a couple questions coming in. One is a super chat from the Saul Goodman Twitter account. It's nice to see Saul Goodman Twitter says, definitely need to chat on how you and Vince came up with the iconic "I'm not in danger, Skylar, I am the danger" in Breaking Bad's "Cornered." Yeah, I wrote "Cornered" down and that's one that Michael Slovis directed, which is cool, right?
Yes.
So yeah, can you share a little bit about how that came together?
Yeah, that scene was such a huge scene, and the way the show works with the writers is we really break things down in very meticulous detail when it comes to most of the show, but really specifically those kind of scenes. And so, we had talked through so much of it. And the line was more about, I'm not in danger, I am the danger. Like that had been in the room kind of really from the beginning, or at least really early on, this idea of like him turning it on its head of like, he's often been seen as weak, by Skylar, and him being like, no, I'm the scary, strong guy, which is funny because, it actually, to me, kind of has the opposite effect of like, I have to scare you, but yeah, no, that danger sort of couplet was really early on. And then writing the scene, you kind of add more of that subtlety and the back and forth and all those little extra details. And that happens with a lot of scenes where we have sort of like a touchstone, like line or beat or exchange, and you kind of, those tend to stick around, at least in some form, by the end.
Okay, well, that's good. And I really did enjoy that episode, and many of your episodes as well too. And you've got a lot. We've got them all listed in the description as well too, the ones from Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul that you've written. And it's so funny. One of the things we'll talk about is the amount of the diversity in the writer's room. I mean, one of my friends who I know well, Glenn Mazzara, he's a strong advocate for women in the writer's room. I mean, he goes to extreme lengths to make sure not only their voice is heard, but they're the same pay and, all that kind of stuff. But there's a great team of women writers in the room. And I think that a lot of that has to go on a big nod to Vince, right? For, bringing in this talent.
Yeah. Yes. And, and with Better Call Saul, Vince and Peter both really working to make sure that, we have that, gender equality in the room. I think there was, a definite decision to kind of be, and a lot of people, to really make sure that voice was being represented in there. Which was good and helpful for me. There were times when the balance was more in one direction, but by the time my last season on Saul, it was really equal, and I think they've actually tipped in the other way now, which is kind of funny because you don't necessarily think of it as which is great actually, because this idea of like, well, it's kind of a guy's show, and the idea of like, no, but we also write like guy shows, and I think it definitely helps play out in characters like him and. Even Mrs. Kettleman and like people like that kind of allows a little more of that perspective, and you can get a little more subtlety. Not that the guys can't write those characters, but having that lived experience definitely helps within the room.
Yeah, it's a great team, and it's nice to see some of them carried over to Better Call Saul. which is great. But it's an amazing team, and we're blessed as fans watching it. And now yourself as a fan, you get to see what your friends, back at the office or the Zoom office are writing.
Right.
Here's a question from another one from our friends and from our YouTube members, Karina. She says, in Better Call Saul season 4, episode 9, was it your idea to come up with the Bell backstory or the backstory for the iconic Bell given to Hector by Lalo? In a way, it makes Lalo have an eventual unknowing hand in Gus's death indirectly, it seems.
Yeah. I think that pretty early on when we decided we wanted to have Hector, Tio in the show, there were all these things. Like with Better Call Saul, it's like, oh, what do we want to give a backstory on? Because there's a balance. You don't want to do too much backstory or like explain like literally everything. But the bell always seemed like a good one because it's such a weird bell. Like it's not just like a normal little bell that you would expect to be on his wheelchair. It's like very kind of ornate. And so it always felt like it had to have a story. And so there was always this intention to try to explain it. And as the story kind of kept evolving and we brought Lalo in, it felt kind of like the perfect opportunity for like Lalo to be the one who gave him the bell. And then also you could tell a story about Lalo and establish the kind of guy that he is. While also, for fans of both shows it's like a little Easter egg of like, oh, this is where the bell came from. So it just felt like a really fun opportunity to kind of tell a backstory while also telling forward story with it, which is always, kind of the ideal. That's what you want.
For sure. And it's an iconic character in itself. It's very cool. And something I didn't even know about until the other day. I'm sure you know this. I didn't. I was talking to my friend Warren Royal that runs bobbleheads.com and Royal Bobbles. They make a lot of the Better Call Saul action figure or the bobbleheads. And the Hector Salamanca. Have you seen those bobbleheads? Have you seen them?
No, I haven't seen the Hector one. Okay. I mean, I've seen Saul. And
let me grab this one just for a second because there's a reason why I'm talking about this story. So here's Hector here, right? Okay. Oh my goodness. Now, if you listen to the bell, Vince actually sent, so they're all licensed, they're officially licensed by, Sony Pictures and everybody. Vince sent the audio file from the board, from the master files of the sound file of that bell. So that bell that you hear is Hector's bell. Isn't that cool?
I am not surprised that is 100% something that Vince would be like, well, it has to be the real bell.
Yeah, it can't be a substitute, not some little bite ding or something, right? It can't be.
Yes, that is peak Vince Gilligan brand right there.
Yeah, and what it is, it's one of those. It's one of those voice boxes that you would sample a human's voice, right? Like whether you're singing or if like you get like the Buzz Lightyear to Infinity and Beyond, the samples, the voices. Well, it's made for that, but it's sampled that, so that's pretty cool. There is a super chat question that came in from Shawshank. And by the way, Shawshank, he just had a milestone on his YouTube channel. He reviews Better Call Saul, great channel. Says, Confessions is one of my favorite Breaking Bad episodes. How did the writers come about in deciding how Walter would confess? Good one.
Oh my gosh. I feel like that was always fairly early on. We kind of came up with that idea. So much of Walt in the final season was, he kind of becomes the antagonist, he's the bad guy, like who's the villain every season. And Walt truly, the point, I mean, obviously we had antagonists for him, but like he really was the central villain of the last season. And so having him confess and be kind of hubris of it, was very appealing to us, because he just gets so out of control and he's like really feeling himself, at the end there. And so I think that was a lot of it, was just the idea of hubris, but then also pulling Skylar into it, because it ends up being, it's a conspiracy between them, right? They end up kind of doing it together. So that was also really sort of an appealing thing of like, what's a thing that they can kind of do together, that will play interesting for the show and put them on the same side in a weird, twisted, evil way.
Yeah, really put Skylar into a bad position with her family. I mean, to do that against Hank and Marie, it was horrible. little did she know what she was in for. She would have been smarter to go right to the DEA, make a deal with Hank or something. But wouldn't have been made for great TV either. But wow, incredible. Bob has a question. Says, Gennifer, thanks for being inspiring through your writing and on Twitter. How can writers get more and more skilled at putting subtext into dialogue where a lot of ideas and emotion are implied but not spoken?
I think sort of, subtext. I love subtext. It's, I think it can be hard to do, especially in, TV and screenwriting, just because it can be slightly discouraged at times, because you have such a short period of time to tell a story. You need to make sure that people are understanding. My trick my technique with subtext is, I tend to write a scene with all the text out there, the first time. So it's like, this is what this scene is about. This is them saying that, this is what they're feeling, just kind of getting it on the page so that I know what the scene is about, and then making sure that works, that the emotion of it works, and the thrust of it works. And so once I do that, then I go through and I start being like, what is like the subtlest way I can say this and still make it understandable, but keep it from a character saying, I'm really angry at you for doing this. Like, how is a way that they would say that, where they're not saying that, but they're saying something that expresses that, and pulling it back and pulling it back and pulling it back, just kind of as you go through the revisions, and then finding the line between intriguing subtext and, completely opaque, you can't understand it. It's challenging, it's practice, and you usually can take it further than you think. And then at a certain point, you have to have other people read it and be like, are they getting what this scene is about? So.
Makes sense. Something I've learned greatly from a couple writers, yourself being one, just reading some of the things on your Twitter. And I like that, the fact that, you'll do some Ask Me Anything questions about writing and things like that, and it spawned some great conversation. I've learned this from you just recently, is probably maybe within the past few weeks. Someone had asked you and your writing process about writing music, like if you hear, Van Halen's Jump playing on the thing, whatever, right? So you're pretty committed if you write that in. And Tom had shared something about, writing pets or animals into a scene. You better be darn sure you want those pets and animals, into a scene, because there's all the logistics involved. But with music, I think maybe there's two reasons why you might do it. One, for the sake of the story, but would the other reason maybe be licensing sometimes? Maybe you just might not be able to get licensing, or maybe too costly for just to have it on the scene for 15 seconds. Is licensing ever an issue by not writing it in, or?
Licensing is just an issue in general. Mm-hmm. It's not usually an issue for not writing it in. It actually can kind of be it can sometimes work against you, because, if you write a song in, and then you can't license it, mm-hmm. or it is too expensive, which happens. Music rights are very expensive. And you put a song in and then you can't get it. Then people are like, but it's supposed to be Jump. Why isn't it Jump?
Yeah.
And then you kind of run into trouble. But usually what you would do is, if you have a really specific song in mind, you could write it in the script, but you would also just be talking to your music supervisor and kind of getting ahead of it. This is something we want to use. Can we license it? And having them really pursue that early on and kind of figure out what it entails. And, they tend to be able to work magic. But you don't always get what you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and then you have to adjust.
Yeah.
So that's a thing about writing music into scripts and putting temp music into cuts, is sometimes you can get attached to something and then it doesn't work out. And so you have to find something new, mm-hmm. Which is a challenge in itself.
I think Thomas naming his company Super Music Vision is a perfect title for that. I mean, what they do, what he has in his head, he knows what he's got in the archives. And I'm sure it comes to, to you guys when you're writing, and okay, we can do this here, we can do this here, this would be perfect. Or I'm sure sometimes you go to them, and I don't know how that whole process works, but yeah, his team is one of the very best in the business.
Yeah. And, a lot of times we go to them and say, what are you feeling for this? And this is the kind of vibe we're looking for. And he also sends, playlists, periodically of things that he likes to help, if something inspires. Yeah. And I have songs that I listen to regularly from that playlist that never ended up in the show, because they're great songs. He and his team are pretty amazing, and they find stuff that I think you wouldn't necessarily find. Like, there's something about going for like a really well-known song, and it definitely has its place, but there's also something about finding a song that people aren't as familiar with, and
Yeah.
kind of really bonding it to that scene. So you're not thinking of like the other movies that you've seen that have that song. Because if you do that, you want to put a twist on it, so it's not like, oh yeah, that's the song that you play when you go to, the club, or,
That's right.
the drug den or whatever.
Well, Gordon Smith educated me once when he was on the show. I think did he? I think it might have been in a tweet. I was tweeting about one of the scenes. One of my favorite scenes in Better Call Saul was after Howard was relentlessly pursuing Jimmy for the job, want a job, and he throws the bowling balls over Howard's fence, his gate. And there's that really build up a real percussive, and I just assumed right away it was one of Dave Porter's scores, because Dave's really known for a lot of percussion and things like that. And Gordon's like, no, that was one of Thomas's things, and he told me the name of the song, and I'll never remember it in a million years. But it's so cool that, you think sometimes you think it's stuff that's in the archives from the music supervision, and it's Dave, or the other way around. So just all the way around, the music is great. But here's a good question from Nat Romero. She says, so I'm assuming you departed from Better Call Saul after season 4. What do you miss the most from being inside the Gilliverse, or from being out of the Gilliverse, or being inside the Gilliverse for so many years?
I miss my colleagues the most. I miss the writers, and I also miss, the cast and crew. Because when you could, I would go to set for my episodes, and you really, you form a bond with people, and you're creating these characters. With the actors, these are dialogues that you have with them about who these people are. And I miss that a lot, because we have really thoughtful, talented actors on that show who are so deeply invested that it is a conversation, and not being talked at. It's a back and forth, and so I miss that the most. I miss my friends in the writers' room, and just those stories and characters. I love the characters on Better Call Saul. I'm very attached to them, and I am sad that I don't get to write them, and I don't kind of get to live with them, because I have strong feelings about them.
Yeah. You said something which is great, because this is a perfect segue. You said, you'd be going to set. And this was from, this is a comment. I told you I was going to say something tonight from our good friend, Ms. Marion, who I love greatly. She was so awesome on the show. We got so many good things said about her. She came in with this bundle of energy that it just took us all over. It was great. But she says maybe you could share some tips on how to be a great writer to have on set. It's not an easy thing to do, and people don't really tell newer writers what to look for. She's also saying that you give really great notes. Giving notes is hard. Your writing is incredible. And when she was a script coordinating, her first drafts were incredible to read, and virtually no typos. So there you go. So being a good writer on set, maybe some tips for that, like being a writer and on set.
Yeah, it's it can be challenging. So much of it is the relationship with the director, and being on this, on the same page with them, and really establishing that in prep, making sure that you guys, that everybody, they understand your intention behind the scenes, but that you also have the flexibility of their interpretation and how they're going to choose to tell this story. So a lot of it is just really making sure that you are able to communicate well with the director, and, there's like a level of mutual respect there, like Michael Slovis and I loved all my directors on both shows. Michael Slovis and I had a really particularly strong bond, and worked really, really well together. And, there were times where he would be at his monitor and they would do a take, and he'd look back at me, and be like, and before I would even say something, he would be like, do you want to do this? Or like, is that good? Thumbs up. And, that kind of shorthand is really helpful. The other thing, I think the biggest thing is understanding that you are there as a resource, but you're also there as you're the one who, you understand where the show is going. You understand the intention behind these things. And so I try to approach it less from a place of like, well, I know what's right, and more of a place of like, hey, here's where we're going. Here's why we're doing this. What can I do to kind of help you guys, get on that path, if you're having sort of any issues with it. And also, when people have feedback, because they do, being able to process that and understand what is absolutely vital to the story to do exactly the way it's written, and what is open to, an actor's interpretation, and allowing for that flexibility. Because sometimes when you write something, it's like, no, it's this way.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see it and you need to be open to the fact, like, sometimes it's like, a lot of the time, most of the time, it's way better, and accepting that it might look different, but still good. And also just staying out of the way, like knowing where you're supposed to be, and what meetings you should be at, and being there for rehearsal, but then getting out of the way, because the crew needs to work and time is money and all that. So it's mostly about having a strong vision, but also being collaborative and understanding your place for good, and for like when you need to step back.
Very good answer. Well, she spoke very highly of you, and everyone that I've talked to. Actually, I was even talking to Julianne Emery, and she said some nice things about you as well too. So she's great.
I love Julianne.
Oh, I
love her so much.
I know she's incredible. I want to get her back out of character. As I told you off the air, we had her in character as Betsy Kellerman, but I want to talk about some of her other great work too. I mean, she keeps very busy, which is good, and she knocks out of the park every time as well too. Here's a question from Big Bubbles, a Big Bubbles fan. Are you also a fan of the movie Hooper? I know it was a tip of your hat to your dad to have Jack character mentioned in it.
Hooper?
Yeah.
I don't know this.
Okay.
I know I'm having a vague memory. I am not actually.
Okay. All right. That's okay.
I think that was another writer though.
No problem at all. I relay them as they come in. And sometimes it could be the wrong
I'm sorry.
thing. No, it's okay. It's okay.
Sorry, question asker.
my beautiful better half, Sandra Lee, she uses voice text and I don't think that was her error there. It wasn't. But sometimes the questions will come through, and what I read, I'm like Ron Burgundy. I read anything that gets put in front of me, so I got to be careful because I could say some really bad things sometimes. The Vivid Kiwi. Why did they, and see, I haven't seen a lot of the deleted scenes from season 5 yet. I got to get the Blu-ray, but it says, why did they delete the scene of Lalo setting Travel Wire on fire? So you were out in the end of season 4. Yeah. So you wouldn't know that.
I don't know.
No, we'll find out. Well, we've got Peter Gould coming up on a week from Fridays.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll talk to Peter about it. So Vivid Kiwi, come back a week from this Friday, and please ask Peter that question in person, and you can maybe have an answer from Peter. A good question from Mrs. Ignacio Varga. What is the most challenging part of writing for you? Yeah, that's a good one.
I mean, writing itself, it's a blank page. I'm much better at revising, even if I like literally I've just written like write a funny joke here, or like make some good line about blah blah blah. Like if I have words on a page, I'm much better at being able to revise them. And but writing that first draft is always the hardest, most laborious part of the process for me. As far as story creation, I'm very character driven and character heavy, and I love characters. I love dialogue. I love, why they do things. So sometimes incident can be a bit challenging for me, like what is it that they're doing here? Like, why are they doing this? And coming up with, kind of like fun, set piecey, plotty things can be a bit of a challenge. I mean, I get there, but my first place is always like, but how do they feel? This, and so, but what are they doing? I'm more about the why they're doing it as opposed to like the specifics of what they're doing. But it's something that, I get to do more and more of, it's a skill that you build, and I definitely feel like I'm moving forward in that area as well. Good.
Here's a question that I know I'm not going to be able to ask with a straight face. It always makes me giggle. Blazy Gardner, one of our good regulars and good friends, she says, how did you come up with the squat cobbler? And I just love that.
I knew it was going to be squat cobbler when you said that.
I know, right? I just giggle like a little kid. And what other ideas were discussed before you settled on that? Were there other ideas? I mean, okay, you got to get the squat cobbler. I mean, was there worse and was there not so bad?
Right. So the act itself of what the video was theoretically that he was doing. Yeah, I think it came up fairly early that we wanted to do pie sitting. We wanted something that was offbeat and not, necessarily everybody's particular cup of tea, but that was not predatory or abusive or anything that would implicate our characters in a way that was really negative. And so, a slightly obscure fetish video, nobody's doing anything bad there, but there are societal pressures, of what can be embarrassing. So I think that really just sort of like straddled that line perfectly for us, the pie sitting thing. And I had, because I spend so much time on the internet, I had heard of this particular fetish, and it had like an actual name. And then they were like, well, we just wrote, he sits on pies, he sits on pies, he sits on pies. And we sent the scripts at some point to Bob, and he was like, well, yes, yeah, you got to name it. Like, it can't just be like, he's sitting in pies. It has to have a name. And I was like, well, this is like, I think what it's actually called. And he's like, and Vince and people were like, no, it needs to be funnier. Like, it has to be like a name. And so then it became a brainstorming session of like, what could you name it? And I don't know who came up with Squat Cobbler. It was like, it might have been Tom. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely
I blame Tom for sure.
It's probably, there was like, the Boston cream splat and like all the, like, it was basically like a group brainstorming session of like, what are some funny names? So naming it actually happened later in the process. And that was because Bob, who is he knows a little bit about comedy,
just a bit.
Was like, yeah, that's the punchline, guys.
Yeah.
You gotta name it. So,
and
now there's t-shirts. It's great.
I know. Well, you said you're, doing some research online, but after this episode was done, did you have to clear your search history?
I mean, I've been in this business for a very long time, and I was an assistant for many years. Yeah. And my internet search history, I have been damned by it long ago.
Yeah, I'm surprised Secret Service hasn't knocked on your door a couple times.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, at Breaking Bad, you can only imagine the searches that I had to do for that.
Yeah, so. Yeah. I won't even say the words on YouTube. I don't want to get flagged.
Yeah, I know.
Here is a question. Let me see. I went a little too far. This one, it was from Fernando. Was it intentional, the relation between the scene where Walter tells Gretchen, what is your presumption about me? And the scene where Walter says, who is it that you think you see?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Yeah, I mean, I don't remember specifically, but very likely there's so much about Walt that's presentational and this idea of like who people see him as. I mean, there's so much kind of insecurity within him and this feeling of like, I'm not getting my due. And so that would obviously be a recurring theme in his life, and particularly with the women in his life, who he feels he's been, like emasculated by. So I'm sure that there was a feeling of pairing that, but I can't remember if it was like, I don't think we specifically talked about it, but his pride has always been kind of that defining flaw for him. And so it was something we were very conscious of. Like, anytime he makes a mistake, it's pretty much due to pride. At least, in the later seasons for sure. Mm-hmm. Well, in the early seasons when he turns down the money. So, like it was kind of a guidepost for us throughout.
Good answer for sure. Here's a question about video gaming. I told you we'd probably get into video games. This is from Nat. She says, you're a big video game fan. What is a game that you have played over and over again throughout the years, never get tired? And what's the next game you're going to play?
So my favorite, it's 2 game series, Mass Effect,
okay,
and Dragon Age series. They're both BioWare games, and I can play those again and again and again and again. Mass Effect is probably my greatest love because I love sci-fi and space, mm-hmm. As well as fantasy. But yeah, they're like my comfort games. I'm playing Dragon Age right now because it's a weird time and there's a lot of stress. So going to comfort games. As far as my next game, I'm really excited for the Horizon Zero Dawn sequel, which I know is not out yet. And then I have not played Last of Us 2 yet. So please don't post any weird stuff to me or anything about spoilers, because I would like to go in fresh. So that's probably the next thing up in my queue. And I haven't decided yet if I'm going to play this Cyberpunk game. So,
okay. I'm hearing really mixed reviews on Cyberpunk. I really am. It sounds like they're banking on Keanu Reeves' character and kind of like, what Walking Dead did. I forget the name of the game. Junior told me about it tonight. Norman Reedus is in it. I climbed the mountain thing, whatever that was called.
Oh, yeah. Death Strand.
Yeah, that's Death Strand or something like that. Yeah, that's kind of a drag. one we're looking forward to. I guess it comes out tomorrow. My son got into the Oculus, like the VR stuff, right? And do you remember a game?
Oh, yeah.
I used to love this game, a CD-ROM game back in the day. It was the Mist, right?
Mist. Oh, yeah. Are they bringing that out for Oculus?
Yeah, and I saw some gameplay tonight. And I get really motion sick for that kind of stuff, but I think I've tried to set on once. I was just looking at some apartments and stuff like that. It didn't seem to make me it didn't seem to make me motion sick. So I'm going to try it, but it was beautiful then back in the early 90s or whatever. But did you ever, this wasn't a question I had for you, but just because we're talking video games, did you ever play some games back as a kid and like they were just like the cat's ass, so to speak, of greatest game ever. And then you come back, like a couple games I played that I thought I loved, like Ghouls and Ghosts and Ghosts and Goblins, whatever. There's two different platforms, whatever. You know, just running through the cemetery you're a knight, shooting the zombies and stuff like that. And I thought I loved the game. And you get them again now, like through Nintendo Wii and stuff like, or the Switch and stuff like that. And like, my God, this game is hard as hell. And why did I think it was so good? And how could I have been good at this game? Do you ever have any games like that you go back and rediscover?
Yeah, it's funny. I think the thing about difficulty is so interesting because I didn't have like a Nintendo when I was a kid. I was the one kid who didn't. So I never got good at any of those games because I would go to my friends to play them and they wouldn't want to play because they played it all the time. It's like having a friend with a pool, they like never want to go swimming. And so I always thought I was bad at video games because like when I would go to play Mario or Link or, Zelda and all that stuff, I was like, oh, I suck at this. I keep dying. And now I'm realizing like more and more in retrospect, like games were harder at that time because you didn't have save points like you do now. You didn't have difficulty settings. It was like, you get sent back to the beginning. And so I think like, when I revisit, I'm a little bit gentler with myself, actually. And I'm like, yeah, no, this is repetitive and hard, but like, it was that was what they were building at the time. But yeah, I mean, my biggest gateway game when I was younger was GoldenEye.
Oh yeah.
Which was on N64. Yeah. And I mean, that game, I went back to it recently and I was just like, I don't even know how to control this anymore.
Yeah.
But it did. I feel like, especially the 2-player fighting. I don't know how you ever age out of that. It's just deeply satisfying, especially if you're just slapping each other.
For sure. This will be the last video game thing I'll say, but one I remember this is nice when you think you love the game and you go back and you love it just as much as you thought you did. Do you remember one called Blaster Master?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Wasn't that great? Like not only were you in this little tank, but you could jump your guy out, and then you could pew 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 pew, and then we'd go into the other levels where he'd be the big character and stuff like that. I would say the difficulty factor for me now is if on a 1 to 10, I'd say probably an 8 or a 9 for difficulty. When I was a younger teen, whatever, I don't think it was that hard, but at least it made me really elated again. Like, oh, I loved it then, I still love it.
Yeah,
that was a good one.
No, I mean, there's definitely, and like I love like Galaga. I mean,
for sure,
ridiculous stuff like that. That's so simple, but every time if I go anywhere that has an arcade and I see it, like that's my game. I don't know. And again, it's so simple.
I know, right?
I don't know.
It just
like hits that particular thing, I guess.
Yeah, good memories for sure. Remember those days going to the arcades? Like we don't really get to, especially in the days of COVID. But as things are different now, we'd go to the arcades and bring as many quarters as we could and hang out there and the music playing. I miss those days.
Yeah.
Here's a good question from Lori. Lori comes up with some really deep dive questions. She's really good for this. She says, "Did you know Carlton Cuse before you worked on The Strain, and were you a fan of Lost?"
So the funniest thing about that is my very first PA job, I was a production office PA in San Francisco on Nash Bridges, which was a show that Carlton created. And he was the showrunner. And so I had known him from that. I'd met him once. I was a production office PA and I was in San Francisco. He was in LA. I think I met him once in the office. I remember meeting him. He's very tall. And I was a fan of Lost. I fell off fairly early. I fell off in season 2, actually. But I loved all the potential of it and so much of what was going on in the story. But when I ended up working on The Strain, I think in the interview I said, like my first job was Nash Bridges. And it was he was like, oh my God. It was like this kind of weird connection. And it was really cool to end up working for him with him as a writer, and The Strain was my first producer credit as well. So to go from a Carlton Cuse show, it's like literally like the lowest position you can on the crew to being a producer on one of his shows was like a really interesting kind of, circle to complete. Yeah. And I had a great time on the strain, and he was so supportive of me as a writer and a producer.
Great.
In particular.
That'll always have a very special place for you for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. And I haven't seen Lost. I haven't seen one episode of Lost. Can you believe it?
Oh, really?
No, I haven't. I feel embarrassed to say it, but I mean, I always let the skeletons out of the closet. I've never seen it. And just we talked about Julianne Emery earlier. It'd been a long time since I gave into watching Preacher. I didn't know if it was my thing, but of course the people that were involved with it. I mean, we got Dave Porter over there, we got Sam over there, and Julianne being on there. I was like, well, I got to check it out. And then I was glued to my Netflix. I just did not leave. Loved it. So I got to get out of my comfort zone sometimes and try some of these things. And my son is in the chat right now, Eric Jr. And the reason why I want to mention him is, many reasons. I love the guy. We were talking about him off the air. But I told him that, as soon as I said you had this thing with gaming keyboards and mechanical keyboards, we should say, he's like, now he's interested, right? He loves Breaking Bad, loves Better Call Saul, but you're talking keyboards. Now you want him over. And this is what's cool about Eric Jr. I want him to realize what you love about them. And it threw me for a loop as well, too. What is the fascination with mechanical keyboards?
Oh, yeah. I don't really use them for gaming. I use them for writing because I like I go for tactile switches, and I like that tactile feeling. I like the sound of the keys clacking and that feedback. And it's funny because it induces me to write more because the sensory experience of writing is satisfying. And so it's like, I want to get on a run here. I want to be typing a lot. I've been using them exclusively for writing, and it's actually helped my writing.
That's great. The clacking would be therapeutic.
Yes.
I like that.
And they're also just very meditative because you have to set them up and build them, and you got to get and so it's a nice way to I basically am sitting there setting up my keyboard and watching, Schitt's Creek, and it's been very meditative during COVID.
Oh, that's good.
Interesting.
Now he knows more about that than I do. And obviously we talked about this as well too, like green switches and red switches and purple switches and brown.
Yeah, brown.
Yeah. Now, do you go for the ones that are like the most clacky to give you that experience?
No.
Okay.
No, I do not go for. I like a silent tactile.
Okay.
But because then it's more the it's a different kind of sound, and then you get the key caps give you a sound as well. But no, the clicky switches are interesting, but I think they would drive me crazy at a certain point, unfortunately. So
if anyone's just jumping into the show right now and they come in and they hear you say silent tactile, they might be thinking that we're talking military weapons and who knows what we're talking about, right? The silent tactile, I'll go for silent tactile, night vision, all that kind of stuff. No, that's really cool though, because I would have expected gaming, right? I assumed gaming, and that's very cool.
Yeah. No, I play on consoles and not on PC. So
I saw you posting about getting a PS5. That is his one thing he wants for Christmas. Did you get one?
I don't have one. I don't have one yet. I desperately want one, but
are you gonna get?
I have to do the work.
You gonna go digital, or do you want the one with that'll take the disc? I want the discs.
I like a physical. I like physical media. I'm the right age to appreciate physical media and want that archive, because the digital it can just go away.
I know.
You don't own it.
Well, it's nice to have a Blu-ray player too. So not everybody has a Blu-ray player in the house. So we're trying desperately. I've got a lot of my friends watching, even some over in this. I'm in Canada, so some of my friends, even that are in the chat right now, they're trying to find one for me, and they'll ship me one over here. I want to get one real bad for them, and Junior says, "Well, we can get an Xbox over." He tried swaying me on the Xbox for a little bit, but I have mad respect for Xboxes, but I've just been a Sony guy. I really enjoy Sony. I just do.
Yeah,
it's good.
Yeah, I have both, but I definitely go more towards my PlayStation.
I'm certainly not saying one's better than the other. I just really like Sony. Shawshank brought up a good point. I couldn't believe this is actually an anniversary tonight. Shawshank says, also, this is the 4-month anniversary of Inside the Gilliverse. The first episode was with Peter Dyseth. We have a great, it's been a great community and some excellent discussions with the vast of the Gilliverse show. So thank you for mentioning that. I had no idea. I told you how this thing came about, just talking to Tom, and here we are. 21 episodes in, hard to believe. It's been a great thing for COVID's been hell on all of us, and I think we're all looking for something to do. And people are really looking forward to season 6 of Better Call Saul, and this has been kind of a community therapy session for all of us. Yeah. It's made me feel a lot better. And getting this, I've made so many cool friends, all thanks to the writers, like all your colleagues. It's been great. I'm really, really glad I decided to do this show. So thank you for reminding us on the anniversary. 4 months.
Yeah.
Lots more to go.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And Peter was so great. Did you see his self-tape audition with his cat? It went big time viral on Twitter. Yeah, so he's doing a read. Look it up after. You'll thank me later. And he's got a sheet in the back, and he's doing the typical Peter Dyseth, I'm 6'3", whatever, blah blah blah. Yeah. And all of a sudden, I think his cat's name is June. I forget. I want to say it's June.
Yeah.
Comes flying in and what did he say? And I'm worse at retelling a joke, a punchline, whatever. It was just so funny what he said. Something like "Heavens to Betsy" or something like that. Sandra she could probably tell me. And she takes down the whole thing, right? It's almost like, hey, you're not the star, I'm the star. So Peter Dyseth loved him, and he was our very first guest on the show here.
He's lovely. I've never met him in person.
No, right?
Sadly, right? But no, I love him, and that's definitely a story of an actor making a character really come alive, and then you want to write for them.
Yeah, so. That's right. And working, in side by side with Bob Odenkirk, and going toe to toe with Bob. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, being funny. Yeah.
Yeah. Handling his own. That's right. I mean, Bob would could upstage anybody easily. He's just so good. But kudos to Peter. Love him. He's a very nice guy. Karina says the episode you wrote, I see you, from season 3, episode 8 of Breaking Bad, started off with one of my favorite Jesse lines. Roll me further, bitch. Did that come up with did you come up with that particular line?
Gosh. Probably. I don't know. I mean,
back a bit.
Yeah. Like it's so interesting because who comes up with what is it, it's usually like a
group.
80% is you, but you have the stuff from the room, you have stuff that comes up in notes, you have actors. So yeah, no, I don't know. I was less, I think I wrote fewer of the sort of like Jesse, saying bitch lines. I'm much better, with the variations of douchebag. So, that was my particular.
that one worked well for you.
Yeah. So any Hank isms, like that was me. I was right there. So.
Okay. I know it's funny because I know you've said this a million times, and the writers all say this, because it's such a group effort. You might almost forget, and it's not like someone's trying to take credit for it. It's just like we heard it so many times, and all of a sudden, we'll go with that. Who originally said that? Oh, Tom, you can have it, or Jenny, you can have it, or whatever. But that's happened to me before too, and I certainly don't mean to do it, especially when it's my better half. But I've come up with some ideas. I'll say, hey, sweetie, I got this great idea. Like one time I did a limited range show. I was doing a show here on Walking Dead. It was called Rocking Dead. And it's a little bit of a run, had maybe 6, 8, 10 episodes. And in the middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning, I wake up and I said, hey, sweetie, I got this great idea. I'm going to do a show on Walking Dead. It's, Rocking Dead, and we'll have people from the show, whatever. And she looked at me with this cold look. I'm like, what? I said, don't you like my idea? And, 2 months before, she was the one who gave me the idea. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, all right. I'm sorry. I'm backpedaling a little bit. So you certainly don't mean to take credit. I guess that's just what we do.
We all end up with lines, with iconic lines in other people's episodes. And so it kind of it balances out, So it's like, you're like, oh, they got my cool line and they got credit for it. But then you get a cool line from somebody else. So that collaboration is great, and you end up with sort of the best show. And again, so much of your script is you, but it's you have that collective brain trust to really bring those moments home and make sure that they are resounding, I agree, moments. So
here's a great question from Shawshank, and I'm really glad he brought this question up because I told you I was going to ask something similar about one of my favorite episodes that you wrote. So Shawshank says, Salud is one of the best Breaking Bad episodes. How did the writer's room decide on Gus's plan to wipe out Don Eladio and his entire gang?
Wow. Part of this is because it's been a long time since we did the show. I mean, Gus was always moving towards this sort of elaborate, 20-year, however many year plan of revenge. I think we really like the idea of Gus kind of using sheer willpower to take them down, by poisoning himself. It just was it just says so much about that character, that he's willing to poison himself in order to bring down, this enemy of his. And it's kind of a foolproof It's a foolproof plan in the sense of like, they're not going to think that he knows he's going to have him drink first. He knows that if he's going to go with this, and it also gives him the upper hand because he's completely outnumbered. So if you poison everybody, then you only have, gaff you got to take care of. Like you're not dealing with as many things. And we also like the very specific imagery of him, throwing up the alcohol, taking the pill, doing all those things. Like, what would he do to also be smart about it? And then having this doctor that he's ready there to do all these transfusions. So I think it was really talking about like, how would someone like Gus do this? Like, he wouldn't come in with guns blazing. He just wouldn't. And so it was like, what's the most Gus way to kill somebody? And it's like to almost kill yourself in the process, So yeah, we were like poisoning, and then all that other stuff kind of came together, and then bringing Jesse into it. It was I don't know. He does these things that I guess would normally be considered sneaky, but they're really just sort of smart and subtle. Like there isn't like, well, I have to be the loudest person taking someone down. It's like, no, I just have to do it. Win.
What's scary about that is we've all seen this in so many movies where someone's going to get killed and by poisoning in a case like this. So, okay, someone will have dinner. When Walt and Jesse tried to poison Tuco, right? But let's get outside of the Gilliverse for a moment. Poisoning some food and they're going to eat it, whatever. And then sometimes the table gets spun around and then you don't know who's got the poison. But to go to the extent that you guys did, that was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. You put the fear in us. Okay, now what's going to happen? Yeah. And then it executed, and it was fantastic, and almost causing Gus's life. So that was really well done. I can't really give an example of anything else on television I've ever seen that executed that so smoothly. Mentally scary. So kudos on that. Here's a good question, and we're getting close to the end of the show here. Henry says, if you were to have another Better Call Saul episode titled something blank, what would it be called?
Something. Gosh. I don't know.
That's a tough one. Yeah.
I don't know.
Something
probably. Forgotten. I don't know. I've got a bunch of different ones floating around in my head. Probably something along the lines of like, because I'm like this, something important, like something vital, something like I'm just very much about like, or I don't know. It's weird because like I don't do kind of those more jokey titles that feel like references. I always want to do stuff that just feels like stab you in the heart, and be evocative. So I'd probably do something really snobby and evocative about like, the human condition.
I tell you what, why don't we go into a joke right now? Because I've been meaning to do this with the past 3 or 4 guests, and I forgot to always ask. I did ask Michael Slovis this off the air. So how about we say something stinks? And we'll say, because there's a right answer to this, and I'm not sure if you've seen any of our other shows, but we bring it up once in a while, and this is a Tom Schnauz thing. What do you think it smells like in the Gilliverse?
What do I think it smells like in the Gilliverse?
And not like a stinky writer's room or anything like that. The sweaty writer's room.
In the Gilliverse?
Yeah.
I think it smells like very fine, like whiskey.
Okay, that's cool. And
yeah,
I have one more thing. Regret. Okay.
Just for the characters, I feel like there's so much regret among the characters.
Okay, well there is a 2-part answer. There's 2 things that smell. So the whiskey, or regret, I should say. The regret is close. And we asked the same question to Vince Gilligan, and Vince got one of the 2. My answer when Tom presented it to me was I said cocobolo, like cocobolo would. Thinking of Jimmy's desk, right?
Yeah.
It was. I couldn't have been further from the answer, but it is bacon and fear.
That's right. Bacon. Mm-hmm. Why didn't I think of bacon?
Yeah, Tom.
Practically made of bacon. Yeah. No. Yeah, and fear. Yeah. Fear. I got it. So I tend to be the slightly more positive person in that room. So.
Well, regret and fear can have. They could go hand in hand.
I mean, yeah. Fear is often driven by this like feeling of not wanting to regret something.
That's right. So. I'm going to give you half a point. All right.
Okay, good.
You get half a point. Awesome. All right, ding, ding, ding. That's good. Actually, we need this. Okay, awesome, good. And Junior says cherry browns are where it's at for silent tactile switches. Says Junior. So there we go. That the expert in the house says there. So one of the last questions of the evening here. Nat says, if Chuck hadn't taken his own life, a great episode. What path do you think the show would have taken? Could the Saul we know from Breaking Bad have his strict brother still around.
Right. I mean, so much of the show was about what are the things that grounds Jimmy McGill and how do you strip those away from him? And there's a couple things. And Chuck McGill is one of the big ones. And so, he really always was kind of doomed because I don't think that Jimmy could become Saul if Chuck was around. I really don't, because there was always that pulling him back. And I think even at the end when they were so estranged, there was still that, like, Chuck is the person that he wants to impress the most, who he wants to see him, for who he really is and who refuses to. And if there was still a chance that he could show Chuck that he wasn't the scumbag that Chuck thought he was, I don't think he ever would have become that person. So no, I think I really hated killing him, and that was a very, very difficult episode to write and a very difficult episode to watch, actually. But yeah, I think he had to go, unfortunately, to get Saul, who I'm also sad that Jimmy becomes Saul. I love Jimmy. I don't want Jimmy to die,
right? Yeah.
Saul. So
it was sad to see. Like, it's funny. Like, I've always been a fan of Michael McKean and everything he's done. Being a musician, I love him in Spinal Tap. I mean, one of many, many things he's done. Obviously, so many pieces of brilliant work. But I loved him and I hated him on the show, and that goes to show you how much, like, not only is he a great actor, but the lines that you and the team wrote for him, it goes to show you that what happens behind the scenes to make a good, good television. Yeah. It was sad to see him go, but it did really, really well. Did it change Jimmy? I don't know. It's hard to say. He kind of got over it pretty quickly. It's hard to say, but
did he?
You broke up there just for a second. Can you repeat that?
I said, did he though? Did he really get over it quickly?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? I don't know. Well, listen, we're at the end of the show here. This has been, I knew it was going to be good. I really enjoyed having your time this evening. I hope you had fun. It feels like a Friday, which is nice. And nice to make a Wednesday feel like a Friday. It's been great to have you. And
thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. I look forward to hearing more from you maybe next year. You can tell us a little bit more at your other project there. As
hopefully, gosh, I'm dying to tell you something.
I know, right? I know you want to tell a lot of people as well. I know.
I know.
Get this, going. Here's a good super chat from Saul Goodman. Twitter says, "Everyone, please mask up." Great show, he says. They say. So agreed. Be safe out there. And I know we're approaching. You over in the United States has had your Thanksgiving. We had ours back in October. And Christmas is coming for those that celebrate it, and we all want to be with our families. But if travel's involved, it's just do the right thing, and everyone will get through this on the other side, and people get back to work, and it'll be a much better place. But just do the right thing to get through this. Vaccines are coming out now, which is looking good. We've got some over here in Canada. It's looking good. Fingers crossed. Yeah. But I just want to also, unfortunately, thank you for your time as well tonight. But I want to say thank you to a few of our people here as well, too. I want to say thank you to our channel members here. We have a membership option here. You can join down below. Our Patreon supporters, my beautiful Sandra Lee, of course, for running the chat efficiently as she does every week. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be able to get half these questions to you. And I still miss them sometimes, but that's my fault, not hers. There are subscribers, our super chatters, and our PayPal donators, and those that buy our merch like I'm wearing right now at the Broad Stash Boutique. Thank you so very, very much. And we'll be back. We're still working on this Friday's show, but the following Friday is going to be Peter Gould. So we're looking forward to having him back. And we had lots of fun last time. We surprised him last time with, I'm not going to be able to trump this again, but we surprised him with Bob Odenkirk himself last time he was here.
Nice.
So that was fun. We kept that a secret for a little bit. So Jenny, don't go away. I'll say goodbye to you off the air. Everyone, see you real soon. And until next time, cheers.
Thanks again for tuning into Inside the Gilliverse with Eric Broadbent. Be sure to check back each week for more great discussions and interviews with cast and crew from Breaking Bad, El Camino, and Better Call Saul. Please like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends.